Peace and blessings, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Let me begin by saying peace and blessings to everybody. Love, shalom, assalamu alaikum, Ankh and Hotep. I just want y'all to feel blessed. I want you to feel lucky and happy to be alive because believe me, it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Sorry about that. I thought I made a mistake, but yeah, I'm here. Let me just begin like I always begin. After I say peace and blessings, let me throw on that theme music for y'all so y'all can feel this. I want y'all to feel this. Bodhisattva. It means enlightened being. That's beautiful. Welcome to the ceremony. Psychotropic elements inside the lyrics, homie. Yeah. The name of that song is Bodhisattva. Means an enlightened being. It's a meditation hip hop song that I did. I'm very proud of it. And I'm feeling really good today. Happy to be alive. And I wanted to speak to other people about my journey a little bit and speak to you guys about what I've gone through and things that have helped me. I know that a lot of us are struggling, a lot of us is going through it, a lot of us are suffering and feeling pain and experiencing all kinds of sadness and misery. A lot of us are dealing with the depression and we don't want to see the therapist. And a lot of us are very suspicious of medications. I myself have had some negative experiences with some medications, and I'm very suspicious of anything that they give me in the medical field. Enough of us have lost faith in the medical field. We're trying natural, alternative kinds of medicine. And I want to tell you about an alternative lifestyle change that I made that benefited me and helped me get through real dark times in my life. Years ago, I'm 43 now. I was 30 at the time. I had gone through depression for a very long time. I think the first real serious bout of depression I was 7 years old. My dad and my mom, actually my father was no longer with us. My parents were still together, but my father had gotten incarcerated. I didn't know what was going on. I was scared. I was terrified. I didn't know what was happening. I just know that dad wasn't around no more. And they didn't give us a whole lot of details, but they would take us to go see him. And they were trying to get him out. I guess they were holding him, before a trial or whatever. And I was just real depressed about it. And so I started to feel almost as if, like they say, survivor's guilt. I felt like survivor's guilt. Like somehow it was my fault and somehow I should be doing something. And I went through a real serious bout of depression about that. And then the depression would come and go over the years. I was always a little bit melancholy. I guess, I was a dysfunctional middle kid. So I would have these bouts of melancholy. I spent a lot of time alone as a kid because I enjoyed reading and being by myself more than being around other people. I wouldn't say I was antisocial, but I would definitely say I preferred my own company. As the years went by, I had real big goals and real big ambitions, and it just seemed like I couldn't achieve them. And so, I was going through depression, and then, when I was 21 years old, my father passed away. My father and my relationship as I got older had become more and more rocky because he felt, he expected me to be the straight arrow out of the family. He wanted me to be the one who made him proud, and I guess he felt that I wasn't making him proud the way I should have. And so after a while, we began to reconnect and recommune and build up our relationship again. And he died. As I'm trying to reconnect with the man and know the man and learn the man, he passed away. So after he passed away, I went through major depression for a very long time. I didn't know how to handle the depression. So, of course, me being the melancholy spirit that I was drawn to the spirit of alcohol. People who suffer from depression, I don't know what it is. People who are more melancholic in their humor tend to drink, and I was a drinker. That was the only way I knew how to handle discomfort, loneliness, depression, sadness, anxiety. The only medication I was taking at the time was intoxication. I needed to be drunk, and I was drunk a lot. A friend of mine, my boy Ty, actually did a video with him on his channel talking about his life story. But he reminded me of a time when I was in my late teens, maybe early 20s. He saw me on a city bus at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting on a city bus drinking a pint of Yukon Jack. And he said he was very saddened by that and very disappointed by that, which I understand absolutely. It was a sad thing to see. A friend of yours you went to school with, who you thought was a cool guy, you thought I was a smart dude, and I thought he was a very smart dude. We had mutual respect for each other. He was on his way to work. At the time, I think I was getting off of work or something. I can't remember what I was doing. But yeah, to see me that early in the morning getting drunk is a sight to behold. He wasn't happy about that. But yeah, that's how depressed I was, and that's how much I drank. I would spend days and days and weeks at a time intoxicated. That's the only way I knew how to handle what I was going through. And unfortunately, the pain of losing my father and the depression that I experienced in my childhood, if you don't address depression, if you don't address the pain, what happens is that it accumulates. Like water in a dam. First, there's a little bit of water, and then you block it. And then eventually the water just builds up and builds up and builds up, and then it overflows, right? That's what was happening to me as far as my depression. I wasn't addressing my issues. I wasn't improving myself. I wasn't growing and developing. So what ended up happening is I just became more and more depressed and more unable to handle real life until it got to the point where when I was 30, I started to have really severe panic attacks. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was happening. I would just be unable to breathe. My heart would be beating really, really fast. I would feel completely out of it and disoriented. And I went to the hospital. I went to the hospital a few times, thinking that maybe I was having a heart attack or maybe I was having some kind of bizarre esoteric health issue. Didn't know what the hell was happening. But then I went to go see my doctor, and my doctor says, there's nothing physically wrong with you. This may be an anxiety thing. As soon as he said that, something clicked in my brain. And I was like, now I get it. And that's how I am. In any situation, I might be angry, I might be frustrated, I might feel despondent. But as soon as I can fully understand it, I can start thinking in terms of solution. I'm a solution-oriented person. I don't like to sit around being all sad about shit. I don't like to complain. I don't like to complain. I don't like to be around complainers. I'm like, yo, let's do this now. Let's get it done. That's always my attitude. Let's go. Let's go is always let's go. Come on, let's do it. That's always my attitude. And so once I figured out that the issue was the anxiety, I decided to start using meditation. But before I found out what the issue was, as I mentioned, I was in and out of the hospital for a while. Didn't know what the hell was going on. And one night I'm in the ER. It's really busy. Doctor walks in, takes one look at me, looks at the chart. He says, give this guy metropolol, and walks out. I didn't know what metropolol was. He didn't explain what it was. He didn't explain how it would work. But when I took it, it felt weird. Come to find out, metropolol is a medication that has two uses. It has the use of slowing down your heart rate, and they use it as an anti-anxiety medication. Now, I don't understand how if somebody's feeling anxious, you give them a pill that slows down their heart rate and they feel less anxious. I'm not sure exactly how that's supposed to work, but that's what they use it for. But feeling your heart rate slow down because you're using a drug, it's a weird feeling if nobody explains anything to you. If nobody explains the use of the drug, the power of the drug, the purpose of the drug, if nobody explains that, it's really strange feeling that. And it really made me panic. Using that pill, using metropolol the first few times, really made me panic. I was very uncomfortable. I felt like the pill was making me feel worse than the actual anxiety attack. So I took the bottle of pills, and I noticed that on the bottle it says use for 10 days, don't stop. It wasn't a long-term prescription. It was just for 10 days. And I looked at it, and I just threw it in the garbage. Threw it in the garbage because I wanted nothing else to do with it. And I thought about it, and I said, the issue lays in my mind, and so I'm going to use my mind to solve the problem. And that's when I began to start meditating. And at first, it was really stressful for me. I had tried meditation in my early 20s, and I was too fidgety and too restless to do it then. But now, because I was a little older, and because I was at the end of my rope as far as my mental health, I was able to do it. So I started off with just 5 minutes. And then 10 minutes, then 15 minutes, and then an hour. And it really benefited me because the anxiety and the depression that I was suffering from over the course of meditating for, the first 6 months, I began to feel better. and feel a little bit more stable. After a year, I felt even more stable, and I actually began to feel something I hadn't felt in a while, which was legitimately happy. I didn't need to get drunk to be happy. I didn't need to be intoxicated to be happy. I was just happy. And then after 2 years uh, of meditation, I felt like I had totally overcome my depression. And I've never had a severe bout of depression unless there was a reason. Sometimes I would be depressed. Like, for instance, when I was going through health issues earlier this year, I went through a period where I was depressed because I wasn't sure what the future would hold. So that's understandable. But as far as the illness, the mental illness of depression and, forecasting negatively and unbridled anxiety, all of that was gone. I had overcome these illnesses with the natural path, the natural medication of meditation. And I felt really good about that. I felt so good about it that as I began to meditate more and more, I decided I wanted to teach. So I started my own business called the Wellness Initiative, and went around everywhere I could possibly go in the state of Connecticut trying to teach meditation classes. And I did okay. Business didn't grow as much as I would have liked. And then COVID happened, quarantine happened, and shut everything down. And so eventually, I was losing money. I had to shut down my business. But I tried, and I love doing it, to be honest with you. What I want to talk about today is how meditation works. It worked for me, and I want to see if it could. I want you to understand how it could possibly work for you. Now, some individuals might need the medication. You might need the therapist. Have a conversation with your therapist and ask, hey, do you think it's possible for me to maybe think that maybe one day I won't need these medications? I ask that of my doctor. Every time I go to my doctor and they say, you need this pill, you need that pill, I say, is there any possible way that I could deal with this naturally? If they want to give me a blood pressure pill, okay, fine, cool. I'll just change my diet. I'll change my diet. I'll lose some weight. I won't need the pill anymore. Yeah, you need this pill because your blood sugars have been running too high. Okay, well, you know what? Let me just change up my diet. And I change up my diet, and, I don't need the medication no more. Same thing with other mental illnesses, depression, anxiety. Yeah, you could address those and deal with those. Even PTSD. I've done the research. I've read articles that said that, a lot of people use medication for PTSD and they'll use meditation. They said the meditation is just as effective as the medication that they give you. And this is peer-reviewed scientific documentation. You can look it up for yourself. But let's start off with how meditation affects the brain. We are going to, let me just share my screen real quick. All right. Now, this part here, this is a part of your brain called the anterior cingulate. Now, I was reading a book called Buddha's Brain that says that the anterior cingulate does a lot of things. But one of the things the anterior cingulate does is that it helps you to forecast. If you're ever driving, right, and you start imagining what would happen if you were in a car accident, well, guess what? That is the anterior cingulate working, because before we had civilization and we lived out in nature as a species, we had to always keep our head on a swivel. One of the things that we started doing was making predictions of dangerous things that could happen. That part of the brain, the part of the brain that handles that is the anterior cingulate. The anterior cingulate area of the brain occupies a pivotal position in a cortical network responsive to predatory threats, and it exerts a critical role in processing fear memory. So it's a part of the brain that helps you process fear memory, so things that happen to you that are really dangerous, and it helps you respond to potential threats. That part of the brain, and some people, like myself, when I was going through depression, is hyperactive and it's uncontrollable, right? So that means that when you see those individuals walking around who are always expecting something bad to happen, a lot of times because they've gone through trauma and they can't stop expecting bad things to happen, and you're sitting there and you're like, let's go to a bar, have a drink, eat some hot wings, and they're predicting, I don't want to go because this might happen, that might happen. And it's snowing outside. I've known people who, if it's snowing outside, they're not going to drive. They can't bring themselves to drive in any kind of inclement weather because their brain, the anterior cingulate of the brain, is making these huge predictions that it's going to be an inevitable disaster. Same thing with relationships. There are some individuals who are in relationships who consistently predict that things are always going to go bad. They're always going to go bad, so they don't give relationships a real shot. These individuals have a hyperactive anterior cingulate part of the brain, and meditation helps you to calm it down. Meditation reduces brain activity. So instead of your brain bouncing all over the place and these parts of the brain having all these uncontrolled responses to things, or even creating things to respond to, because you might imagine that there's a threat and there's no threat. So your brain will create something for you to be scared of. The anterior cingulate part of the brain, it will create reasons for you to be afraid because it wants to be on guard for anything that could potentially go wrong. And when those parts of the brain are hyperactive, what happens is that it increases brain activity, it increases fear, and increases anxiety, which is detrimental to the body. It makes you feel miserable, and it can make you physically ill. Your immune system can be weakened by these negative thoughts. Meditation helps to calm you down, reduces brain activity, and over time, it'll train the anterior cingulate to stop making these apocalyptic predictions about everything. It'll begin to heal your trauma and heal the trauma response. So with meditation, you won't be stressing yourself out by imagining all the things that can go wrong. The whole goal of meditation is not even bliss. The goal is not to avoid misery. Avoidance is not the goal. Bliss is not the goal. The goal of meditation is to be able to accept things as they are. And if you're in a situation where there is no threat, there's nothing to be worried about. You don't have to predict that dangerous things are going to happen or bad things are going to happen. And you're in the present moment when you meditate. The brain is being trained. That part of the brain that's predicting horrible things in the future and it's obsessed with things that happened in the past and obsessed with those memories. Well, guess what? That part of the brain is calmed down and it allows you to just be in the present moment, right? All because of meditation. Give me 1 second. Let me change this slide. Boom, boom, boom. All right, this next part of the brain is the amygdala. The amygdala participates in the regulation of autonomic and endocrine functions, decision-making, and adaptations of instinctive and motivational behaviors to changes in the environment through implicit associated learning, changes in short and long-term synaptic plasticity, and activation of the fight or flight response. What does all that mean? Essentially, it means this. The amygdala is a part of the brain that kicks in when there's a change in the environment, when you have to adapt to a change in the environment because it can be potentially dangerous. When the fight or flight response kicks in, everything has to happen very quickly. What happens is the prefrontal cortex of the brain, it shuts down. The prefrontal cortex of the brain takes in information and absorbs information. It figures things out. And it gives you an appropriate response based upon potential threats, potential consequences, but it gives you time to make decisions. When fight or flight kicks in, that means that your brain senses that there's some kind of danger or thinks there's some kind of danger that you have to respond to without thinking. So when an individual is in a situation and they're triggered by the situation, let's say, for instance, you had somebody who suffered from verbal abuse by their mother. They're in a relationship. Their girlfriend is yelling at them. Their wife is yelling at them. They're triggered by that. The flight or fight response kicks in immediately, and they have to make decisions on how to get the heck out of there as fast as possible. Individuals who are avoidant in relationships, it's because of this. Individuals who can't take criticism, it's because of this. That part of the brain, the amygdala, kicks in. The amygdala, the hippocampus, and I think the hypothalamus, they kick in because your brain is telling you there is a threat, there is danger, there's a threat to us. We gotta go now. However, what happens with meditation is that you learn to create time. Meditation is beautiful in a mystical sense. It helps you to create space and time like a god, but not just in a mystical sense, but in real life. A lot of times certain situations happen and you feel like, oops, I gotta go, I gotta respond. Meditation puts you in a calmer state and reduces the brain activity in these alarmed, scared parts of the brain. So it allows you to make a space so you can understand, listen, I don't have to respond right away. I could take a breath. I could take a moment. I can calm myself down and really look at the situation the way it truly is, not based upon my fear, not based upon my trauma. You can calm down the anterior cingulate and retrain the brain. It says neuroplasticity. That means that neuroplasticity means the brain can change. Your brain structure can actually change, can be capable of more things. For instance, I'm trying to learn how to play guitar. Now, granted, because I've been dealing with health issues, I haven't been as healthy and as energetic and perky as I've always been. But when I find the time and I have the energy, I'll sit and I'll fiddle around with the guitar. In order for me to learn guitar, that means that my brain there has to be a certain level of neuroplasticity. I'm learning something new. As you learn something new, the brain structure actually changes. And it's the same thing with the amygdala, same thing with the anterior cingulate. You can actually change your brain structure and change how the brain responds. There are certain parts of the brain and body that you can actually change. In certain parts of the brain, you can actually increase gray matter. And this part of the brain, the amygdala, is triggered whenever you feel there's a threat. But if you meditate and calm yourself down, you understand that a lot of times these threats are not dangerous. They're not fatal. If somebody questions you, that's not a fatal threat. For some people, they feel like it is, but it's not. Somebody can question you. Somebody can love you and challenge you at the same time. You don't have to run. But for a lot of people, that fight or flight kicks in. Training yourself through meditation allows you to be able to sit in these situations and live with these situations without running. Fight or flight kicks in situations that are not even dangerous because of trauma, because of fear. I used to experience that in relationships. I would have almost like a response where I would emotionally shut down in certain situations. The fight or flight would kick in because of the trauma of what I seen with my parents. I lived in a household where my father was abusive to my mom. Loved my dad to death. As I said, I was, before he passed away, me and him were rebuilding our relationship and talking about things as men. And it's unfortunate I never really got an opportunity to talk to him about certain things that I saw as a kid growing up. But when it came to being close to somebody emotionally, being close to a woman emotionally, a lot of times the amygdala would kick in. The amygdala would kick in and fight or flight would kick in. And I would feel like I had to get out of there before things got too intimate. And I found myself self-sabotaging, or I found myself making up reasons to not be a part of it out of fear, out of trauma. That's real. This is real. We having a real conversation here. That's real as it gets. That's some real shit. I'm not gonna sit here and paint a picture of myself as being some smooth Rico Suave ladies man who's just smashing everything left and right. I was a person who had some real deep-seated emotional issues because of the trauma I went through as a kid. Meditation allowed me to calm myself down and see things as they truly are, and to address tough situations and have tough conversations, and not only have them, but actually want to have them. I used to want to avoid these conversations and confrontations so much when I was younger. Whenever anything was off, I'd be so nervous in a relationship to communicate these things out of fear, not knowing what was going to happen. I guess a part of me was afraid of abuse. Like that old Prince song said, maybe I'm just like my mother. I think in a lot of ways, I was so scared of my dad. The scariest thing was that I would be like him. I didn't want to be abusive. I didn't want to be an abusive husband or spouse or boyfriend. So in my mind, in order for me to have a relationship, I couldn't be like my dad. I had to learn how to be like my mom. So in a lot of the relationships that I had, I just learned how to take abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, people telling you you're not good enough, people shitting on your dreams. I dealt with that. Out of fear of being like my dad, I chose to be the victim in a situation when I didn't have to be. But learning the practices and techniques of meditation and mindfulness allowed me to just be in the present moment and train my brain. You got to remember, like a lot of times we respond to things out of fear because the brain is getting triggered. But you and your brain, you and your thoughts are not the same thing. Your brain and your body are one entity working together, but you have a level of consciousness above even your brain where you could tell the brain what to do. You can control what the brain is doing. If you feel a sense that you need to run, you can actually go against that. You feel like you have to exit the situation, you could go against that. Have you ever saw a firefighter run into a burning building and risk his or her life to protect somebody else and bring them out of the building? That's the individual going against their own fear response. The brain is saying run. The anterior cingulate is saying run. The amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus is all saying run now. And you're going against that. You're going into the fire, not away from it, because you are in control. Same thing with life. You actually can train your brain and get your brain to do what needs to be done. You don't have to run from fear. You don't have to run from intimacy. You don't have to run from love. Stand your ground. This is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, overview of the basic anatomy and functions of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is responsible for the regulation of internal organ functions, such as digestion, heart rate, respiratory rate, as well as vasomotor activity and certain reflex actions such as coughing, sneezing, swallowing, and vomiting. Now, saying that the vagus nerve is in charge of a lot of internal bodily functions. Now, when you're afraid, of course, all of your bodily functions have to shut down. When anxiety kicks in, many of these internal functions are going to change. Your heart rate is going to change. So fear is going to affect the vagus nerve. When you're calm, guess what happens? You go into a rest and digest state. The rest and digest state is controlled by the vagus nerve. So there's actual certain breathing techniques that can affect and train and strengthen the vagus nerve. And when you go through a high anxiety moment, all of those internal functions have to change. And it takes a long time for some people to be able to go back to a state of homeostasis. Meaning that when you get all amped up and excited and you're nervous and you're afraid, it could take some people an hour, take some people a week, take some people months before they're able to calm down and relax again. But by meditation, you strengthen the vagus nerve. And what happens is you could have a moment where you feel anxiety and then you could bounce back real quick. I've been in car accidents. Oh man, I was in a car accident. 5 minutes later, I'm good. Oh man, somebody I remember I was going to this there was a little bar I used to go to back when I used to drink in Hartford, Connecticut called Le Bijou. It's a real small place on Heath Street. I used to go over there all the time. Have a little drink, get a little something to eat. And one day I'm coming out of there and I'm walking towards where I parked my car and I see these two dudes come running out of this little corner store that was right next to the Bijou. And something, my spidey senses is tingling. Of course, I see these two dudes come running out looking weird. I'm like, yeah, something's going on. A few seconds later, I see a woman come staggering out of the store. Blood. She had got stabbed. I call the police. I'm staying with the lady, making sure she's okay. She don't speak English. I'm just trying to let her know best I can that I'll wait with her until the police arrive. But I was able to go back into a normal state of mind. I was alarmed and worried about that woman, as I should be, but it didn't just mess up my day like it would have when I was younger. I wasn't filled with anxiety. I wasn't filled with anger and hate the whole day. I was able to bring myself back into a state of homeostasis, go home to my kids, take care of the family. It didn't weigh me down for weeks and weeks on end like it would have when I was younger. It didn't fill me with anger for weeks and weeks on end. It didn't make me feel depressed for weeks and weeks on end. I was able to go back to a state of rest and digest. Why? A person who's suffering from severe anxiety, seeing something like that, how can I see that and not be triggered? It's through meditation and learning how to train the mind, train the vagus nerve, train the body, learn new coping skills. So a lot of times when you're in a hyper anxious situation, you get stuck. You get stuck in that hyper anxious situation and you can't let go of it. You can't bring yourself to calm back down. But it's possible with learning how to meditate and learn how to be mindful. This part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex intelligently regulates our thoughts, actions, and emotions through extensive connections with other brain regions. Meaning that this part of the brain is where you think, where you plan, where you control what you do, where you control your emotions, where you regulate yourself. The prefrontal cortex is extremely important. This is where you make your decisions. This is where you are able to take action. When you're driving, you're using the prefrontal cortex. When you're having a conversation, you're using the prefrontal cortex. Tying your shoes, prefrontal cortex. And a lot of times what happens in moments of fear, this part of the brain, this very important part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, that's going to shut down. When fight or flight kicks in, you don't have time to make decisions. When fight or flight kicks in, you don't have time to sit there and weigh your options. The brain and the body have to be able to completely shut down in a way where you can save energy, because your brain, when you're thinking and making decisions, it uses a tremendous amount of calories. You burn, I think it was like 1,400 calories or 1,600 calories a day just with your brain, just through thinking, just through reading, just through studying. I used to be in college. When I was in college, I would write college papers and be exhausted. I'm not engaged in any kind of complex physical activity. I'm not running. I'm not at the gym. I'm just reading, taking notes, making sure I cite my sources, typing. But by the end, I'm exhausted. Why? Because my brain was using so much energy in order to get that done. So when you're in a state where you're being triggered, say you're having a conversation with somebody and you're not ready for the conversation, you're afraid of somebody judging you, you're afraid of love, afraid of intimacy, afraid to go to work, afraid to be around certain people. That part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, where you can think and make decisions, is shut down so that other parts of the brain can take over so you can get out of danger. It's a different kind of thought. The thought you have in the prefrontal cortex is very different from the thoughts you have when the amygdala and the anterior cingulate and the hypothalamus and the other parts of the brain kick in. Right? This part of the brain that allows you to regulate your emotions and control your emotions, when you meditate, that part of the brain becomes stronger, and you actually can increase gray matter in that part of the brain. So certain individuals who can't control their emotions is because the other parts of the brain are taking control. Meditation allows you to calm yourself down and reduce brain activity so that you can use that part of the brain, even in tough situations, even in dangerous situations. That part of the brain will still be functional and you can still think clearly because you increase the gray matter in that part of the brain through a practice of meditation. Meditate for a year and you'll see clearly. You'll be able to regulate your emotions better. You'll be able to calm yourself down. You're more focused. You become even better. You have more skill at certain things by being mindful. It's awesome. It's really a beautiful thing. Now, why am I talking about all the science of how the brain works? I'm talking about all the science of how the brain works and lead with meditation and mindfulness because I want you to understand how you can change yourself. And I also want you to understand what I was trying to do. When I had my business, the Wellness Initiative, what I was trying to do was teach this skill to people, but I specifically wanted to teach this skill to children. I had a job where I was working at a drug rehab facility for adolescent boys. A lot of them were traumatized. I would meditate with them and they would calm down. There'd be some days where they would be irritated because these were young men who were in recovery. They were trying to get off alcohol, get off pills, get off heroin. Some of them get off cocaine. They would be irritable. They would be frustrated. They'd be so mad. They'd be ready to kill each other. And then I would say, you know what, let's meditate. And I would take maybe one or two of them off somewhere to meditate. I'd take a few more off somewhere to meditate. And by the end, by the time I was done, they would be so calm. They'd be so relaxed. It got to the point where some kids would be waiting for me. They were like, is Devin coming today? And I would come into work and they'd be like, Dev, I was mad. I was about to fight earlier, but I waited for you because I wanted to meditate with you. I need to meditate with you to calm down, Dev. I'd be like, I got you. Come on. And we would go and we would meditate and we'll do our thing. I was also working at a school, public school, and there was a lot of kids there who were having mental health issues, kids with behavior issues, and I began teaching meditation at the school. And when I was at the school, it was cool being physically at the school, but getting into schools was difficult. They're not going to just let somebody who has a business come in and start teaching these kids. And you can't be everywhere all at once. I had a business where I was the CEO and employee. So I wasn't in a position where I could have staff. So in order for me to run the business, I had to figure something out. So what I figured out was this. I wrote a book. It's called Easy, A Guide to Mindfulness and Meditation. This is a book that is written for children 8 to 12. It is written in a way where, I want to help them improve their reading comprehension. I want to help them improve their vocabulary, to give them vocabulary to express how they feel. And also in this book, there's meditation techniques. Very simple, easy meditation techniques that the children can try. There's visualization techniques, affirmation techniques, mindfulness techniques, techniques for self-love to teach these kids. It's meditation techniques for breathing to teach these kids how to calm themselves down, how to regulate their emotions, and how to improve their self-esteem. So I put a lot of emphasis on teaching them basic skills, but also putting it together in a format that it was education-based. School, I knew that I could reach a lot of kids in a school environment. So if I can get the book in schools, my goal was to write the book, and if I could get the book in schools, that'd be a way of helping a lot of people. The book could be in places I can't get to. If I have a book and I can't get into that school, or if I'm working somewhere else, having that book put me in a position where the book could do some of the work of teaching and educating as well. And I love to teach. I love to be in the classroom. I love to be around people. But if I want to be in more places at once, then that's why I wrote the book. So the book can do what I can't do. I can't be in multiple places. I can't just work forever. I can't come to somebody's house at midnight and give them a meditation session. But if a person has that book, it will help. It can reach them in places where I can't physically go. So we do the spirituality videos here. You know, we do the spirituality videos here. We talk about mindfulness and meditation there. And that's the reason. But we also have this here book. And it's called Easy. If anybody who's interested in maybe having a look at the book or you know, talking about the book, you know, you can feel free to inquire below. But also, I want you to understand that you can actually buy a copy of the book. You can buy a copy of the book at my website. It's www.devinmccrory.com. And you can order a copy of the book, Easy, A Guide to Mindfulness and Meditation. We'll have one sent directly to you. And if you want more than one, you can order as many as you like. We'll get them to you as soon as we can. But I want people to buy the book. And it's not an issue of buy the book, buy my product. It's not what we're here for. We're here to try to help people, especially help kids. That's why I wrote this book for kids. And you know, I wrote it when I was 38, I believe. Published it when I was 41. Wow. Published it 2 years ago. And yeah, we put the work in, did the research, put everything together, hired an illustrator. Why? Because we want to reach the kids. We want to help these children. I've seen so many kids struggle with mental health issues. I've seen so many kids struggle with self-love issues. I've seen so many kids who were prescribed medications for mental health. The medications was making them feel sick, or they were afraid of the medications, or the medications would give them wild mood swings. It was supposed to help them calm down, and next thing you know, they're getting in trouble because they're getting in trouble because they can't control themselves. They're throwing, you know, fits in class and fighting in class. So we want to teach these kids a skill, a coping skill, not a coping mechanism, not a crutch. We want to teach these kids a skill, the necessary skill of meditation and mindfulness. So once again, the banner is below. Feel free to contact us if you want a copy of the book. We'll do our absolute best to get it to you as soon as we can. And I want you just to understand, if you have a child, you have a student, you have a classroom, you have, you know, somebody in the age range of 8 to 12 who needs a little help, a little support, get that book. And the book is designed not only to be used in schools with the aid of an adult, the book is also designed to be used by parents at home. So if you're a parent at home, sit with your kids, spend time with the kids and go over the book with them. They might have questions. They might want to try it with you. The book is designed to be used as a tool so you can connect with the child, so you can communicate with the child, and so you both can try meditation at the same time. Teachers, this book is designed to be a partnership between the teacher and the student. This is a way to connect with the students. Parents, this is a means of connecting with your child and helping them. A lot of these kids, they act out and they get labeled as quote unquote bad children. No, there's no such thing as a bad child. There's a child who's experiencing things emotionally they can't communicate and they can't control. Help them to learn the skills necessary so they can learn how to communicate. Help them gain the vocabulary. The book has a glossary in each chapter. The book has question and answer section in each chapter to help with reading comprehension. And the book is written for kids 8 to 12, but it's written in a way where it's fun, it's easy, it's conversational, so they can understand it. But it also has words in there that I know they're going to have to look up. They might not know the meanings of the words, so it teaches them how to define words, how to comprehend words, so they'll have the vocabulary to say, "Mom, I'm feeling." A lot of kids act out because they just don't have the words to say what's going on. That's why when I talk to my kids and my sons, I say, "Divine, how you feeling?" My son always says the same thing, "Good." And I started saying to him, "Divine, you know, I want you to use a different word besides that. I want him to have the vocabulary to truly communicate what's going on." Because my son Divine is very, very quiet. And he don't make a sound until he's upset. And then when he gets upset and you see his behavior change, then it's like, okay, I know he's upset. I should have. That's why I decided I got to talk to him more. Because he'll be so quiet and he seems so independent until he's mad about something or he feels hurt about something. So I sit him down every day and we have a conversation. Sometimes I be like, it's Daddy Divine time. Come on. And his younger brother Destin started getting jealous. So then I started doing, all right, so it's just one-on-one time with my sons. Because I do everything with both of them. And I started doing things with them separately so we can have that communication. And so we could try utilizing the tools of vocabulary to explain how we feeling. It's a very important tool. And I started meditating with my kids more. I've always meditated with them. They've always enjoyed it. We're doing it more now. And they love it. They love the process of meditation. And they're closer. They're closer to me. Their kids have always loved daddy. They've always been daddy boys. But now they feel even more excited about me because the relationship is being deepened by our practice of meditation. Trust me, this meditation is a beautiful thing. It's very helpful. It's very helpful. It's very empowering. It's very beautiful. It's very relaxing, soothing for parents and for children, for teachers and for children. Trust me. Give this a shot and order yours now. All right. Peace and blessings to everybody. I really appreciate y'all spending time with me while I'm here. I was feeling very, very drained and tired all week, but I'm not going nowhere, and I'm gonna still keep spreading this love and spreading this light everywhere. And hopefully I'll see y'all soon. All right. Time for that theme music. Bodhisattva. It means enlightened being. That's beautiful. Yeah. Welcome to the ceremony. Psychotropic elements inside the lyrics, homie. Yeah, I dig that song. I'm gonna put this song back up here. So I think I'm gonna put the whole thing up here for y'all to see. But anyhow, peace and blessings to all of y'all. I will speak to y'all soon. May God be with you.